Hi again, I'm Stephen Wessner, CEO of Predictive ROI, and over the last several weeks, I've been recording and sharing videos with you on how you can use the Trojan horse of sales strategy in a channel agnostic way, meaning that if you have a podcast, this works. If you have a YouTube series, this works. If you have a rockin' awesome blog, this works. If you're a contributor for Inc., Forbes, Entrepreneur, whatever, it works. And however you're creating content, wherever your cornerstone content resides, and whether you're speaking because you like voice, or you're writing because you like books, however you're creating content in a channel agnostic way, the Trojan horse of sales strategy works. So over the last several weeks, I've been giving you some examples and sharing some examples really behind the curtain as to how to do that and how to do it well, so it never feels like biz dev. It never feels like sales. If it feels like sales, it's going to be schmutzy, and you're going to turn people off by trying to do that. It needs to come from a much more genuine place than that, where you're being helpful to your audience and the person that you're interviewing, and then that turns into biz dev. Maybe that turns into biz dev downstream because you've treated that relationship with such respect and gratitude and generosity. So that's what the Trojan horse is. It's not about just kicking the door open and yay, it's sales time. That's not how this works. Okay, so now let's take and look at an example of how you might use the Trojan horse of sales as a way to gain sponsorship for your content. So let's say that you have a rockin' awesome YouTube series, right? And you're really looking for a sponsor for not only that property, your YouTube series. You should be referring to your different channels as properties. So your YouTube series is a property. Your podcast is a property. Media properties. Your blog, that's a property. It's a media property. So let's say that you're looking for a sponsorship for your YouTube series, your property on YouTube. So a way to do that would be to you want to find third-party brands that align well with your thought leadership, right? So if you're in the finance space or insurance space or other types of professional services space, then you want to think about maybe their vendors, maybe their companies or brands that you consistently recommend to your clients. Those would be aligned well probably with your thought leadership, as opposed to, let's say that you're a professional services firm and then you decide, I'm going to recommend, something from health and fitness. That doesn't really align very well, right? So think about the third-party brands, the companies, the vendors, the products, the services, whatever, that you either use directly in your business or you consistently recommend that clients, people within your community use and work with, right? Because it adds value to their business. That's probably the prospect pool, if you want to call it that, of potential sponsors for your content. Okay, so then it's not going to feel weird to them. It's going to feel very aligned with your thought leadership, with their thought leadership. If you're now the host of a rockin' awesome YouTube series, if you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm doing a series on XYZ, and XYZ series happens to match up with their service offering, about how companies, business owners like me, can also benefit from this type of strategy, which aligns well with their service. I would love to be able to interview you, Mr. or Ms. owner of said company. Please come on to my YouTube series. I'd like to be able to interview you. Let's sit down and talk about your path, your journey, your path to success, and how your company helps other business owners like me, because I'd like to be able to share that message with my community. They likely say yes to that, right? Because that's a chance for them to share their thought leadership, their insights, their wisdom with your growing community. And then if they're really smart and proactive, they will take that asset, they will slice and dice it, and then share it with their community, right? Whether you're in it or not in it, you might get cut out of it, but it doesn't matter. It's still your asset. You help them create. So that's a really solid give. Okay, so then after you've recorded the interview and you've shared it with your community and tagged the person that you interviewed, tag that person in social, and they're feeling the love, and they're seeing all the comments and the tagging and the reshares and all of that stuff, which is awesome. 3 weeks or 4 weeks after that episode is posted, you loop back to them. And it's a very simple conversation. Could be an email. And you say, hey, Sarah, thanks again for being my guest on my YouTube series. I really appreciate it. And you may have seen the comments and the shares and so forth and all the likes, the thumbs up that we got on YouTube. It was awesome. So thanks very much again for taking the time to do that. And you know what? During our conversation, I mean, we work with you guys often, and I'm a big fan of your service, which is why I wanted you to be my guest. But during our conversation, you mentioned X, and that got me thinking more about some of the needs and questions that my community has around X. And I would love it if we could get together, maybe one day next week, and talk about how if you were to sponsor my show, my YouTube series, about how that could be a really cool win-win. How we could maybe help you accomplish your goals and how you could even add more value to our community and that process, how that also adds value to your community. Sarah's going to say yes to that. Why? Because you just had her as a guest on your episode, or excuse me, on your YouTube series. She saw all the love downstream that her insights and wisdom garnered when you shared that. And then they turn that into an asset as well. And then now the point is, as your sponsor, she gets access to all of this content. So can you imagine, Sarah, how much more helpful you could be to your community by taking this content that we're producing on a weekly basis, putting your brand on it, and being able to share that then with your audience. Sarah and her team probably don't have the content engine that you represent. That's another way of how you can use a Trojan horse of sales in a non-schmutzy, non-salesy way to then drive revenue back into your core business, because now you're going to sell sponsorship. I recorded a video probably 5-6 weeks ago about like the typical sort of going rates, if you will, on sponsorships. If you have any questions about that, you can drop me a line and I'm happy to share what we're seeing today. But that could be a significant way for you to generate revenue without it feeling schmutzy or salesy to Sarah. Instead, you were super, super helpful to her and her team. And that then produces a great result outcome because it's more about being helpful than salesy. So I hope that was helpful to you. If you have questions, concerns, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down in the comment fields below. Your feedback is what helps us get better each and every week. So I hope that this was helpful to you. I look forward to seeing you back next week for next week's video. Until then, onward with gusto.